I don't know what it is. I've been trying to get on for a second, but I guess when I was trying to go to Twitter, it was just stopping me. So I never even got a chance to see the intro like that. Nonetheless, let me throw up these ads real quick. Politics as usual. Why am I over here like this? Hold on one second. All right. Hold on one second. Go to my layers. Go to my camera. Hold on. I'm gonna do a show based on the software and equipment that I use. Let me move myself over here, like just so I won't be in the way of the ads up there. Move over just a little bit more. All right. So I see I don't have to get up enough and move a camera. I can just work it all through my setup. So, forgive me, I'm looking over at my monitor screen while I'm over here eating some Jamaican hand macaroni, which I'm not really a fan of, at least not from them. I think they put coconut inside the macaroni. Not really a great fan of it. Is what it is. All right. As you can see, underneath, or you got to join the conversation, go on Twitter, #OldYorkGritty, or you can go on Facebook while we're airing live. Anything you type in will pop up. Just like if you go into the YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube live, you can also join the conversation there, and you will see this popping up. But it'll be whatever you put inside there. This is just some old stuff, Aunt Viv, whatever the case may be. All right. So that's that. Today, hold on, let me go to the different headliner. All right. Who were the Druze? Sitt al-Mulk, right? And Neymar. So on this, we will be continuing our conversation on the Druze. Now, me personally, I question whether this was an attack on the Druze, right? I know it was an attack on the Druze, but was it internal? Like, you'll see as we go through this, right? And I took the time to already bring in certain elements outside of what you'll see in the article. So I basically took a few things and combined it in there so I wouldn't have to try to go search for it. I just decided to get ahead of the game. All right. So hold on. Let me get myself comfortable. All right, let's slide over here. All right. So as you see, I got everything set up. All right. Whatever. Let's get into this. And I will be, in case anybody wonders, most of the time I set up my show, I be, out and about, so I'll use my phone. Hold on, let me pull this up. I have Word on my phone, right? With Word opening up, right? So this is the article. Right, so if you see it, it's white here, regular page, but this is what I set up in advance. So I read it and all of that, and then I just really started doing, letting the computer do it and reading, what's going on here. All right, okay. So we're gonna get into it. Like I said, I'm gonna let the computer do the reading for y'all. Let me turn this down. I'm hearing a little echo. All right. So, pardon me. All right. Read out loud.
Sitt al-Mulk. Sitt al-Mulk, Arabic, lit. Lady of the Kingdom, 970 to 1023, was a Fatimid princess. After the disappearance of her half-brother, the Caliph al-Hakim Bayamar Allah, in 1021, she was instrumental in securing the succession of her nephew Ali Aziz Zahir, and acted as the de facto ruler of the state until her death on February 5, 1023. Family and early life. She was born in September/October 970 at the palace city of Al-Mansouriya in Afriqiya, modern Tunisia, to the Prince Nizar, the future fifth Fatimid. Imam, Caliph, Al-Aziz Billah, R 975 to 996. Her mother was an unnamed Jariya concubine,
Right, hold on a minute.
Walid, and
Right, now, whenever you see the purple, right, that's me bringing in an outside source, meaning that, okay, they mentioned that she was a concubine, Jariya, right, if that's pronunciation, right? And from then, I give you insight into that. So I went, pulled that up, and so you can actually understand what that means. It's very important in this context. So let's keep going.
Enam Walid, Arabic, lit. Mother of the child was the title given to a slave concubine in the Muslim world after she had borne her master a child. She could not be sold and became automatically free on her master's death. The offspring of an Walid were free and considered legitimate children of their father, including full rights of name and inheritance. The practice was a common way for slave girls endowed with beauty and intelligence to advance in the court, especially if they gave birth to sons. Under the caliphates, quite a few of them were raised in rank to queen. Few of them had been fortunate enough to be Valide Sultan, mother of the king. Jariya, also called Yariya and Joaris, was a term for a certain type of slave girl in the medieval Islamic world. They were slaves for pleasure, mu'lada, or slave girls for sexual intercourse, Jawari al-Wa, who had received special training in artistic skills. In contrast to the Chiyen, however, they normally did not perform for other men than the man in whose harem they were placed. History. The slave category and of the Jariya, similar to the Chiyen, rose to fame during the Abbasid Caliphate era, possibly because free Arab women became more and more secluded from society during this time period. They were acquired from the slave market or captured as war booty. The term were applied to such slave girls who, by instruction or self-education, acquired a great knowledge of artistic skills and intellectual knowledge by which they could entertain a man, rather than by sexuality and physical beauty.
Right. So, as you see what's taking place here, right? This is why I brought up Neymar. We'll be getting into her as well. But pay attention to the characteristics of these slaves, right? Understand what is taking place, because as we get back into her, we will understand the importance of her mother, right? Because this is her mother. Her mother who came into this as a slave.
They could study issues from music and poetry to religion, history, and literature, and many were known to be able to entertain their owner by both intellectual as well as musical abilities. There were many examples of Jariyas, with good education, who managed to gain influence over male rulers.
What the hell was that? You see? Always trying to mess me up. Trying to stop the information.
Education, who managed to gain influence over male rulers. The Joaris differed from Chien in that they appear not to perform in public, only in the harem, to which they belonged. Royal harems could employ a very large number of Joaris, who acted as the entertainers of the royal harem and who were not necessarily synonymous with the concubines of the ruler. The Abbasid harem had thousands of Joaris as well as concubines who were not always the same, and this was adopted the harems of many other Islamic rulers, such as the rulers of the Caliphate of Cordoba and the Fatimid Caliphate. The Jariya category of sexual harem slaves were described by the 9th century writer Algiz, who accused them of exerting a destructive influence over their owners created by their artistic skills, which created a web of dependent feelings such as love, hub, passion, hawa, affinity, mashakala, and a wish for continued companionship, ilk.
Right. So, well, we're going to slide down here, because all of this is dealing with Sitt al-Mulk, right? So we're still going to get into that, but let's slide down here and continue with this understanding of this characteristics, right? Let me make sure that everything is open. Okay, so we're going to keep going.
Chien, Arabic, Gjn, singular Kana, Arabic, Gjnh, were a social class of women trained as entertainers, which existed in the pre-modern Islamic world. The term has been used for both non-free women and free, including some of which came from the nobility. It has been suggested that the geisha of Japan are perhaps the most comparable form of socially institutionalized female companionship and entertainment for male patrons, although, of course, the differences are also myriad. Historically, the Chien flourished under the Islamic Umayyad Caliphate, the Abbasid Caliphate, and in Al-Andalus. Terminology. Chien is often rendered in English as singing girls or singing slave girls, but these translations do not reflect the fact that Chien might be of any age and were skilled entertainers whose training extended well beyond singing, including, for example, dancing, composing music and verse, reciting historical or literary anecdotes, akhbar, calligraphy, or shadow puppetry. Other translations include courtesan, musical concubines, or simply women musicians. In some sources, Chien were a subset of Jawari, female slaves, Jariya, and often more specifically a subset of Ima, slave girls, SMA. Chien are thus at times referred to as Ima Shawayar, slave girl poets, or as Maganiat, songstresses, Magania. Many Chien were free women. One of them was even an Abbasid princess. The term originates as a feminine form of pre-Islamic kain, whose meaning was blacksmith, craftsman.
Pay attention, right? So, it's a feminine form of a blacksmith or craftsman, right? Now, I just want to stop for a second and point out, right, if you look at entertainment today, right, and you see what they present, especially for the black woman, right, and how they only perform or especially in the music business, right, you know, their characteristics. Now, in film and all of that, you will see it as well if you're paying attention to how they set up. Remember what I told you about hypnotism and mesmerism, mainly suggestion, right? So now here it is, the suggestive characteristics of, you know, black women or black people in general, the suggestion of the entertainment and how it's gay, or homosexual, whatever, to include the women in that, the rainbow crew, right? And how and what its suggestion is. And then you look at society, right? And you will understand the level of suggestion and how our people have been transformed into this subservient role. And when I'm gonna bring up articles, as I always do, to show and prove how, even with the monkeypox going on, and they were saying, and what was it, like California, they are I guess, like, putting laws in place for black transsexual males, right? So to understand the attack, the mental attack on us, because as you go on, we will still, and everything will relate to what I'm saying.
The meaning of Cain extended to include manual laborers generally, and then focused more specifically on people paid for their work, and then more specifically again to anyone engaged in an artistic performance for reward. From here, its feminine form came to have the sense discussed in this article. Characteristics and history. Like other slaves in the Islamicate world, jinn were legally sexually available to their owners. They were often associated in literature with licentiousness, and sexuality was an important part of their appeal, but they do not seem to have been prostitutes. However, there were also common Kayans who performed for the public in common jinn houses, and these houses were in some cases often brothels. It is not clear how early the institution of the jinn emerged, but jinn certainly flourished during the Abbasid period. According to Matthew S. Gordon, it is not yet clear to what extent courtesans graced regional courts and elite households at other points of Islamic history. Ibrahim al-Masali, 742 to 804 CE, is reported to have claimed that his father was the first to train light-skinned, beautiful girls as jinn, raising their price, whereas previously jinn had been drawn from among girls viewed as less beautiful, and with darker skin, though it is not certain that these claims were accurate. One social phenomenon that can be seen as a successor to the jinn is the Egyptian Amma, courtesans or female entertainers in Arab Egypt, educated to sing and recite classical poetry and to discourse wittily. Because of their social prominence, jinn comprise one of the most richly recorded sections of pre-modern Islamicate female society, particularly female slaves, making them important to the history of slavery in the Muslim world. Moreover, a significant proportion of medieval Arabic female poets whose work survives today were jinn. For a few jinn, it is possible to give quite a full biography. Important medieval sources of jinn include a treatise by Al-Jaiz, 776-868/869 CE, Al-Washa's Kitab al-Muwasha, the brocaded book, and anecdotes included in sources such as the Kitab al-Aghani, Book of Songs, and Alama el-Shawayar, The Slave Poetesses, by al-Isbahani, 897 to 967 CE, Nisa. Al-Khulafa, The Consorts of the Caliphs, by Ibn al-Sai, and al-Mustazraf min Akbar al-Jawari, Choice Anecdotes from the Accounts of Concubines, by al-Suyuti, c. 1445 to 1505 CE. Many of these sources recount the repartee of prominent jinn, though there are hints that jinn in less wealthy households were used by their owners to attract gifts.
Pay attention to that.
In the Abbasid period, jinn were often educated in the cities of Basra, Taif, and Medina. Al-Andalus. It seems that for the first century or so of Arab culture in Al-Andalus, jinn were brought west after being trained in Medina or Baghdad, or were trained by artists from the east. It seems that by the 11th century, with the collapse of the Caliphate of Córdoba, jinn tended to be trained in Córdoba rather than imported after training. It seems that while female singers still existed, enslaved ones were no longer found in Al-Andalus in the 14th century CE. Decline. Further information, Anarchy at Samarra, Al-Muqtadir, and Al-Radi. The institution of Qian declined with the waning fortunes of the Abbasid Caliphate. The initial fracture of the Abbasids did not have immediate impact. The Qian did not take sides in political disputes, but political instability led to fiscal mismanagement. During the Abbasids' heyday, the finances were mismanaged. Further, the new class of Turkish soldiers demanded better pay. This led to the emptying of the treasury. Austerity meant artistic activity could not flourish as before. In addition, soldiers extorted money from citizens perceived as rich. This made ostentatious behavior risky. Naama, demon. Naama or Naama, Hebrew, pleasant, is a demon described in the Zohar, a foundational work of Jewish mysticism. She originated from and is often conflated with another Naama, sister to Tubal-Cain. In Talmudic, Midrashic literature, Naama is indistinguishable from the human Naama, who earned her name by seducing men through her play of symbols. She also enticed the angel Shamdan or Shamran and bore Ashmedai, the king of devils. It was later, in Kabbalistic literature like the Zohar, that she became an inhuman spirit. According to the Zohar, after Cain kills Abel, Adam separates from Eve for 130 years. During this time, Lilith and Naama seduce him and bear his demonic children, who became the plagues of mankind. She and Lilith cause epilepsy in children. In another story from the Zohar, Naama and Lilith are said to have corrupted the angels Uzzah and Azazel. The text states she also attracts demons, as she is continuously chased by demon kings Ephraim and Castaman every night, but she leaps away every time and takes multiple forms to entice men. According to the Zohar, after Cain kills Abel, Adam separates from Eve for 130 years. During this time, Lilith and Naama seduce him and bear his demonic children, who became the plagues of mankind. She and Lilith cause epilepsy in children. She makes sport with the sons of man, and conceives from them through their dreams, from the male desire, and she attaches herself to them. She takes the desire, and nothing more, and from that desire she conceives, and brings forth all kinds of demons into the world. And those sons she bears from men visit the women of humankind, who then conceive from them and give birth to spirits. And all of them go to the first Lilith, and she brings them up.
Okay, so now as we continue, we're going to come back up here. I told you, I just wanted you to get an understanding of that. As we go into her story, alright? So now this is back into Silk al-Mulk,
who is most likely to be identified with the al-Sayyida al-Aziziyya lit. The Lady of Al-Aziz, frequently mentioned in the sources. Al-Sayyida al-Aziziyya was a Melkite Christian, most likely of Byzantine Greek origin.
Now, so we get back into the Greeks, right? And we also get back into Christianity. Pay attention to this, right? Because understanding her, meaning right now they're still talking about the mother, but when we get into the daughter, understand this information, right? Because this is a mother who was a slave woman, right? Who was trained in the art of seduction, right? And these things, and then bore this child, these children. I believe they believe it was two, but it's questionable.
Possibly from a family of the provincial aristocracy of Sicily who were captured in the wars against the Byzantines there sometime before 965. It is known that al-Sayyida al-Aziziyya refused to convert to Islam. Al-Aziz's love for her was great, but scandalized pious Muslim opinion, especially at a time when Al-Aziz was at war with the Byzantines in Syria. Her Christian faith reportedly caused suspicion that she was behind his tolerance towards Christians and Jews, which went as far as the appointment of a Christian, Isa ibn Nashtaris, as vizier. In 986, two of her brothers were appointed to high office in the Melkite church. Orestes became Patriarch of Jerusalem, and Arsenios was made Metropolitan Bishop of Fustat, and later Patriarch of Alexandria. It is still debated among modern scholars whether Al-Sayyida al-Aziziyya was also the mother of Sitt al-Mulk's younger brother, and al-Aziz heir and successor, al-Hakim Bayamar Allah, or 996 to 1021, but the evidence appears to be against it. When her mother died in November 995, the historian al-Makrizi reports Sitt al-Mulk held vigil at her tomb for 1 month. From her mother, the princess inherited a slave girl, Takarab, who became her chief confidant and spy in the palace.
Yeah. Right? Understand. She was her chief confidant that was down with her mother and also was her spy in the palace to let her know the things. Remember, the slaves had their own tactics. That's why when you hear about Moses and them in the Bible, right, you would understand that they initiated spies. They went out and they basically set up to perform these acts as a team. It wasn't, so God, in the sense that people misunderstand it versus the tactics that was used. That's why when people read the Bible, they overlook the tactics. They're looking for this spiritual understanding, to give them some clarity, but the clearest clarity is the tactics that was used in order to gain freedom.
One year before the birth of Sitt al-Mulk, the Fatimid armies had conquered Egypt. In 972 to 973, the Fatimid court moved from Africa to Egypt to take up residence in their newly built capital, Cairo. Thus Sitt al-Mulk spent her childhood at the palace of Khazar al-Bar on the shores of the Nile, and later had her own rooms in the Western Palace at Cairo. Sitt al-Mulk was doted on by her father and was his favorite daughter. Al-Aziz lavished gifts and wealth on her, and even put a military unit at her disposal. Her wealth allowed her to fund a number of charitable endowments. She was renowned for her beauty, but, following common Fatimid practice, she remained unmarried to avoid dynastic complications.
Right? So pay attention again. She did not follow, per se, Islam in the sense of the rest of them. Her mother was not Muslim. Her mother was a Christian, right? And the mother was trained or developed these tactics on how to seduce and control through that seduction, right? So let's understand this as we keep going.
Sitt al-Mulk inherited her father's open-mindedness and tolerance, and, uniquely among Fatimid palace ladies, appears to have been involved in politics. She exercised considerable influence on him during his reign, as seen by the attempt of the Christian vizier Isa ibn Nashtaris, when he was dismissed from his post, to regain his post through her intercession, for which he placed 300,000 dinars at her disposal. Reign of al-Hakim. Caliph al-Aziz died suddenly at Bilbays on October 13, 996, while preparing an expedition against the Byzantines in northern Syria. His sudden death opened the issue of succession, as the caliph's only surviving son, al-Mansur, was 11 years old. His half-sister Sitt al-Mulk therefore supported another candidate, an adult son of the Prince Abdullah, who had been the first designated heir to Caliph al-Mu'azzlid Allah, or 953 to 975, but had died shortly before him, leading to the accession of al-Aziz. According to the Arab chroniclers, she had fallen in love with this otherwise unknown cousin and intended to marry him. The princess reportedly hurried back to Cairo with the senior courtiers and the palace guard to take control of the palace and raise her candidate to the throne, but the eunuch Barjawan, who was al-Mansur's tutor, preempted her by putting the crown on the boy's head as soon as news of al-Aziz's death arrived. Al-Mansur thus became caliph with the regnal name of al-Hakim by Amar Allah, while Sitt al-Mulk was placed under house arrest. Nevertheless, although not much information survives, during the early part of al-Hakim's reign, the relations between Sitt al-Mulk and her brother appear to have been normal and even amicable. In 997, she made him rich gifts, and soon after Barjawan's murder in 1000, which allowed al-Hakim to take over the reins of government himself, he conferred estates with an annual income of 100,000 gold dinars on her. In 1000, al-Hakim even married one of her slave girls. In at least one instance, she also intervened to inform her brother, who was rather ignorant of state affairs, of a conspiracy by two senior officials that led to the execution of the vizier Abu al-Fad ibn Ibrahim, followed by the extortion of vast sums from tax officials in Palestine.
Right, so keep in mind, right? I didn't put it. I didn't highlight the M right here, but married to one of her slave girls. Remember, she knew how to employ the spies. Right? And simply because he's married to one of her slave girls, she has always insight on him. So she's very tactical.
In 1013, she mediated with her brother for a pardon to the Jarahid chieftain al-Hasan ibn Mufarraj, who had previously risen in revolt against Fatimid rule in Palestine along with his father, Mufarraj ibn Dogfal ibn al-Jarrah. Soon, however, al-Hakim's reign began to degenerate into terror and arbitrary rule. The state suffered from an increasingly erratic governance, as the caliph issued a bewildering array of prohibitions ranging from food and singing in public to dogs and baths, launched a persecution of Christians and Jews, culminating in the destruction of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in 1009, purged the old guard of officials he had inherited from his father, and introduced doctrinal innovations, even to the point of seemingly accepting the divine status accorded to him by some of the Ismaili faithful, who would later found the Druze.
Right, who later found the Druze sect. Now, keep in mind, he married one of the slave girls who can be considered a person who was leading him to do such destructions. So she can get him out of there, and she can place who she felt deserved that spot. Right now, I'm only speculating here based off of what I know of her and those tactics, and seeing him become erratic to things that she already trained, but the people was already set up in one way. That was set up through her mother, basically through her father, right? And so she took over and started doing the same thing, but runs across conflict with her half brother. Remember, she tried to even cut him off at the head and, put somebody else in there, which led her to being arrested,
Sect. As a result, the two siblings drifted apart. The princess opposed al-Hakim's intolerant politics, and he was jealous of her, suspecting her of having lovers, including among his generals. The event that most contributed to the rift between the two was connected to the succession. In 1013, al-Hakim chose a cousin, Abd al-Rahim ibn Ilyas. Abd al-Rahim, 1 ibn Ilyas ibn Ahmad ibn al-Mahdi, Arabic, was a member of the Fatimid dynasty who was named heir apparent by the Caliph al-Hakim by Amar Allah in 1013. When al-Hakim was murdered in 1021, He was sidelined in favor of al-Hakim's son, Ali al-Zahir, arrested and imprisoned. He died in captivity, officially by his own hands, but likely assassinated by the real power behind al-Zahir's throne, the Princess Sitt al-Mulk.
What? So, once again, right, people suspect he died, well, he did die in captivity, officially by his own hands, but likely assassinated by the real power behind al-Zahir's throne, the Princess Sitt al-Mulk, right?
As the designated heir apparent, Waliyat al-Muslimin, violating the direct line of succession and overturning a century of precedent of excluding the males of the wider dynasty from all affairs of state. Sitt al-Mulk was committed to the succession of al-Hakim's surviving son Ali, and took him and his mother, the Imwalid Ruqayya, into her palace to shield them from the caliph. The downfall of al-Hakim's erstwhile favorite Malik ibn Sa'id al-Fariki in 1014/5 is apparently related to this. Malik, who had been raised ahead of the judiciary, as chief Q with Makron, and of the Ismaili hierarchy, as chief D with Makron, was accused of being close to her, apparently siding with her over the choice of heir, and was executed. On the night of February 13th, 1021, the caliph disappeared during one of his nightly walks in the streets of Cairo. After a couple of days of search, evidence of his murder was found, and he was declared dead. Of the three contemporary historians to write about these events, and who in turn provided the material for many later historians, the account of the Baghdadi chronicler Hilal al-Sabi directly implicates the princess, writing that after Sitt al-Mulk quarreled with her brother over the direction of the state and the future of the dynasty, she began to fear that he would have her killed.
Now, question me, right? This is me questioning, was this information coming from her inside source, the slave woman who he had taken to be his wife?
She thus approached the Khatama General Ibn Dawaz, whom the caliph suspected of being one of her lovers, and conspired with him to have al-Hakim killed, which was done by Ibn Dawaz's slaves. Given the fervently anti-Fatimid bias of Hilal, this account is suspect, but the later historians Sitt ibn al-Jazi and Ibn Taghraberdi, apparently relying on the second contemporary account, that of the Egyptian Shafi'i Q with Makron, al-Qudai, report that she ordered the execution of all those who participated in the conspiracy to kill al-Hakim. This has been interpreted by modern historians as an attempt to cover up her involvement. On the other hand, Yahya of Antioch, a Christian who had fled al-Hakim's persecution, mentions nothing of Sitt al-Mulk's involvement.
A Christian. Of course, he's not going to say anything. Remember, the mother was a Christian. This is always something that people must keep in mind, right? You have a Greek, right, who's infiltrated or has been taken into captivity and knows the psychological mind game that'll be played on even her captor, right? So understand these things.
In al-Hakim's death, modern scholars are likely divided, with some, such as Yaakov Lev and Fatima Mernisai, considering her participation as probable, and others, such as Heinz Hamm, considering it dubious, since there were many other members of the Fatimid establishment, including Ibn Dawaz, who had an interest in eliminating the erratic caliph. Even Hamm admits, however, that the rumors were persistent, and that, as the affair around Malik al-Fariki shows, al-Hakim did not trust his sister. Regency. Following the disappearance of al-Hakim, and even before he was declared dead, Sitt al-Mulk moved to establish her control of the court, distributing money to the court dignitaries and military commanders, according to Hillel, with the aid of Ibn Dawaz. Hillel reports that al-Hakim's son Ali was raised to the throne, with the regnal name al-Zahir Liazaz din Allah, only 7 days after al-Hakim's disappearance, but all other sources mention that he was crowned on March 27th, with Sitt al-Mulk as the de facto ruler of the state in the meantime. All sources agree that she quickly had Ibn Dawes executed as the one responsible for al-Hakim's death, and perhaps to cover up her own culpability. This was followed soon after by al-Hakim's designated heir, Abd al-Rahim ibn Ilyas, who was then serving as governor of Damascus. He was lured back to Egypt, imprisoned, and killed.
So as we look at this, right, pay attention. Even before he was declared dead, right, Sitt al-Mulk moved to establish her control of the court. Only 7 days after al-Hakim's disappearance, but all sources mention that he was crowned on the 27th, and this is based on, her actions. But all other sources mention that he was, with Sitt al-Mulk as the de facto ruler of the state in the meantime, meaning that until he was able to take, the throne in completion, she was stepping in and basically making and calling the shots, right? So understand that, and understand that even in modern time, what you are understanding, because everything is going to coincide once we finish.
The new caliph had long been under her tutelage during al-Hakim's reign, and remained...
Right. The new caliph had long been under her tutelage, meaning that, he was learning from her. During, al-Hakim's reign, she was grooming him, right, and remained for some time after the coronation, which led to tension with al-Zahir's mother, right, because now that he was in the throne, the mom's like, yo, why is she still calling the shots? The mother ain't stupid, so she's like, the mother is like her. She's like, nah, it's time for me to step in and call some shots here.
So for some time after his coronation, which led to tensions with al-Zahir's mother, Ruqayya. During this early period of al-Zahir's reign, Sitt al-Mulk was the effective governor of the state, known in contemporary sources as the Princess Aunt al-Sayyida al-Amma, or the Princess Aziz al-Sayyida al-Azza. In this capacity, she began to reverse al-Hakim's decisions and restore orderly government, with a particular attention to the state finances. Among other measures, she cancelled the estate grants and salaries that al-Hakim had conferred on his favorites, and restored the customs duties that he had abolished for being un-Islamic. She also reversed her brother's manifold prohibitions, allowing women to leave their homes, and permitting again the listening to music and the drinking of wine.
So remember, if you know anything about Islam, you know that music is not permitted in today's time, and as you know why, because this is where a lot of the influence is coming from. That's why even in today's time, when you see the music industry and the impact of movie and theater on the people think that it doesn't have an impact, like, oh yeah, but no, it does. That's why I know, like, since I was a youth, I never really was into it. I have the ability to write music and stuff, but I'm not into promoting that because I know the damage it does. I told you, after Tupac got shot, and even when he made All Eyes on Me and Me Against the World, I wasn't even listening to him. And I'm a Tupac, admirer. I don't say fan because I'm not a fan of anybody, but I do admire Tupac. And so this was like something that made me step away. But if you notice, right, so she was bringing back an establishment of confusion while he was actually the one who was setting things in place.
The non-Muslims, dhimmis, who had been forced to convert to Islam under al-Hakim, were allowed to return to their old faith. Those who had fled the country were allowed to return. Historian Yaakov Lev points out that she was able to do so as the result of several factors. On the one hand, while women of the Fatimid dynasty were not usually involved in politics, they were not secluded from social and economic life, which not only allowed them contact with the world outside the palace, but even necessitated the supervision of the administrative and financial agents acting on their behalf, giving them some experience in such matters. Finally, particularly after the chaos and terror of al-Hakim's last years, the ruling elite was quite prepared to accept direction from her, for they had little left to lose.
Right. So the ruling elite, remember, they was already looked out for her mother, who was, basically manipulating her father. So she knew already who to keep in place and how to keep them happy.
As Lev writes, in this atmosphere, machinations and a readiness to shed blood had become accepted ways of conducting political life, and by these standards, Sitt al-Mulk was a ruler worthy of the name, for she inspired Heba, awe.
She inspired awe.
While she was widely praised by medieval chroniclers for both her personal qualities as well as for her sound policies, her position was anomalous and dependent on the entirely exceptional circumstances. She may have de facto exercised the functions of a caliph, but it was unthinkable for her to hold power in her own name and claim sovereignty, for example, by having her name included in the Khutbah, Friday sermon. It is unclear how long her regency lasted. The contemporary official and historian al-Muzabihai indicates that power soon passed to a new circle of officials, and that she lost her influence and died in obscurity, while al-Makrizi indicates that she maintained her control over state affairs until her death. She also severely persecuted the Druze religion, which believed in al-Hakim's divinity. She succeeded in eliminating it entirely from Egypt and restricting it to the mountains of Lebanon. She also worked to reduce tensions with the Byzantine Empire over the possession of Aleppo, but before negotiations could be completed, Sitt al-Mulk died of dysentery on February 5, 1023, at the age of 52. Footnotes. This has led to considerable confusion in modern sources regarding the identity and wider family of al-Aziz's consorts. The connection with al-Sayyida has led to speculation that al-Hakim's mother was also a Christian. The sources are contradictory on the matter, but among modern historians, Heinz Halm considers al-Hakim's mother a Greek Christian, although it
considers, Hakim's mother a what? Greek Christian.
Distinct person from al-Sayyida al-Aziziyya, and Orestes and Arsenios, the maternal uncles of al-Hakim, as does Michael Brett. On the other hand, the medieval historian Yahya of Antioch reports that after al-Hakim's death, Sitt al-Mulk donated vestments, books, and silver liturgical objects that she had inherited from Arsenios, implying that she was related to him.
Right? So, this is when we went back into that. So this was a short show, so under an hour. I just wanted to get this out, and we will be continuing. Most likely, I'm going to try to do another hour later on today. Until then, I hope this has helped you understand a system that is set up and still being utilized today. I will be bringing this back up in reference to the Bible. Probably that'll be the next part of this. Until next time, resistance and peace, my brothers. We are out of here.